Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. Today I am joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Hey, y'all.
And it's weird to not say, it threw me off. I was scared. I Rachel is, on vacation or something right now.
Yep.
I'm sure we could make up a fun story, but we won't do that to her.
No.
But it is March, and you know what that means. March Madness. Now, coming from my perspective as huge sports fanatic, every sport I know,
you always bring it up.
I love the sports.
Yeah, you're always talking about sports, Eric.
I can't wait to fill out my bracket and pick the teams that are going to win.
And you're so mad that the bands aren't able to go because I know you're passionate about bands as well.
The halftime shows.
I really wish that the bands could be there to perform. No, I remember participating in a like a contest. Was that what they call them, with the brackets and the things?
I know. Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah, I did that once in an office setting, and I won.
Oh, you did?
Because I just did this guy's pick, this editor, he'll, use his things. Yeah. And so I just did that. And everyone was kind of annoyed at me because I didn't really care. And they were all very passionate about the teams they picked. And so I just kind of steer clear of it because I don't want to, if that were to happen, that I, dumb lucked my way into winning that, I wouldn't want to feel
or plagiarized. It sounds like your way into winning.
It had a button right there. It said pushed it to autofill with this person's picks or whatever.
So you're not filling out a bracket this year?
I have no plans to. I haven't done it since that year, which was
I think you should do
it's part of our staff health culture here.
I know.
I think you should fill it out in a really funny way. Somehow,
I'm not even aware of how that would
coin flip,
how would be
bracket.
funny.
You could do
just go off your
color
intuition.
Palette. I saw one that was based on mascots, but human mascot or weather mascot or weather
you should
beats
do
human.
Like we did a couple weeks ago for conspiracy theories?
I don't know.
Or how we were
draw it out of a hat
when you asked us the 3 questions. You should just go off okay, which one? Pick your answer right away.
Yeah, just feel it.
Just feel the instant. Okay.
Yeah,
Duke or Kansas?
I'll think about it.
Duke's not in it this year though,
so that's just.
Oh yeah, what?
That shows how great I'm doing. I haven't filled out my bracket yet, but I will.
So are you guys into the madness?
I'm into it much more than what's the thing in the fall?
Football? College football?
On Yahoo, what is it?
Fantasy football.
Fantasy football.
Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to catch heat for that big time.
I
always do it with our friend Zach. It's like a little couples thing that we all do it, and I pick on based.
What?
I pick it based on does this person look athletic? Do they?
Okay, I get where you're
going.
Do I
like
the
in
team? Fantasy? Okay.
In fantasy.
Okay, fantasy
so
football.
I take March Madness a little more serious. I'm done now. I think
you don't want to talk anymore.
What's happening?
Well, then I'll do that. I'll just fill out my
March
bracket based on
does
appearance.
the town's a team? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you like their jerseys?
Yeah.
Yeah. But March Madness, I take it a little more serious.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of March Madness. Last year had a bye year, obviously because of coronavirus, and it just kind of reminds us of the beginning of really all of that. I remember
I think that
games
was
getting canceled
right
here at this. I mean, that getting canceled really was one of the first signs of this is serious.
Yes.
So I remember that, but I do. Since 8th grade, I've got a friend named Riley. Wasser21, I think, is his gamer tag.
Oh, great. Watch out for all the followers he's going to get.
And
warn him.
We've had a standing agreement of a $5, bet, for lack of better terms. I mean, a $5 wager and that's never increased as we've gotten older. I mean, it was we were texting today, and I'm like, that was a lot, $5. I had to scrounge a lot of ashtrays and couches at my house if I lost, and I felt so rich if I won, in 8th grade. So we've done it, just an understanding.
That's special.
And so we enter them in, but we do a family one. So we went through last night, and all of our kids picked pretty much my oldest son. This is the first year I think he's gotten it. and my daughter, who's a kindergartner, she kind of understood seating as well. But Lydia, my 4-year-old, just wherever she's been, so she's been to Florida, Missouri.
They're winning.
And she's got family in like Colorado, so anywhere that she's been, doesn't matter how cute. Their team is, she just picks them.
She's probably going to win.
And yeah, she probably will. And so my son, he ended up picking Iowa to go all the way to win, which is, we're going to have a talk about that later. I've got Illinois winning. My wife and I, we usually like wager shoes on it, which isn't really because she's running shoes. And usually it's like a time for me to get basketball shoes. Really, no matter what,
you're going to get shoes.
Either of us is going to, but it's like a reason for someone to earn it. So
that's fun.
Who gets the better shoes?
Well, she runs a lot more often, so she gets shoes more often because she puts a lot of miles. She
puts the work into
on them, and basketball shoes are typically.
No, I was just saying it could dictate who gets the better quality of shoe.
That is
where
a good
does
point.
more of the money go? That's all. Just an idea.
Okay, we'll think about it this year. And maybe a trophy. Maybe we'll come up with a family trophy.
That would be fun. Yeah. You should.
So my youngest daughter, or my middle, not whatever. I call her my middleest daughter.
Got it.
So I've got a biggest, middleest, and littlest daughters.
Okay.
So Lydia cute. Is going to be 4, and she wants a trophy for her birthday.
If she doesn't get one, I want to get her one.
So she can win March Madness because my son's got one. I've got a stupid one from this guys thing I do. Erin's got medals from running, and so she just really feels left out. She literally has a cutout trophy on her wall.
I am melting.
Alex, what kind of pressure are you putting on your kids to have a trophy?
Okay, you're like, I'm like,
no, it is. It's so cute. It is.
Anyway.
I'm just trying to think what kind of trophy you would get would it be a birthday trophy or?
Well, I mean, if she wins March Madness, maybe this will be the year. We're going to start a trophy.
Yeah.
We'll make one or we'll get one at Goodwill, and then that'll be our March Madness family trophy, and it'll just rotate. We have one at CCC that rotates, winners and a losers trophy. And so I think Mark Ashton, since I've been here, has lost the most. And so
is that because he just always bets on Illinois to win?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and he's won as well. A couple times. I think he's the reigning champion right now.
Most.
So he won last year.
Well, 2 years ago.
Oh, 2 years ago.
So
that's
I think he got to hold on to the trophy for an extra year.
But Eric, if you fill out that bracket,
you could do it.
Man, all right. You guys are convincing me. I'll think about it. I'll pray about it. I'll see where I land on this one.
We've got a fun March Madness kind of thing, candy. March Madness Easter candy thing on social media. So
people
if you don't
should
follow
look forward
us,
to
make
that.
sure you look forward to it. It's fun. A lot of staff faces in there. So
at CCC Omaha on
there
social media. Up next, we've got headlines. All right, our first headline comes from Omaha.com. It says GoFundMe set up for Omaha police officer shot at West Roads. If you're not from the area, West Roads is a mall here in Omaha, Nebraska.
Really close to the church.
Very close to the church, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, almost you could say across the street. I mean, by a distance,
really.
But yes, this officer, Jeffrey Whitstruck, had a confrontation with an individual at the mall, and he was, the individual shot at him, and it struck him in the face and the head. There's a GoFundMe account that at this point of recording, which we're recording on Wednesday, is at $71,922.
Wow.
So it's great to see the community step up like that and help him out. I mean, he was in critical condition for a while. He has survived, but from what I understand, he's going to have some reconstructive surgery done. I don't know if they've spoken too much about his current condition, though.
I know I saw something today that he's resting at. I mean, he's at home now, so he's moved from hospital to home, which is great. I mean, I remember when I first heard, I think I saw it, or my wife mentioned it. One of her friends, was like, "Oh my goodness, did you hear this happen?" And that's like, then I go to Omaha Scanner and I'm like, "What happened?" Because that's how I find out when I hear things in Omaha. And then it was just a crazy situation, led to, not obviously, but a police chase all the way through, like almost to Lincoln. They got all the way to Waverly, speeds like 145 miles an hour and all this crazy stuff, but they did end up getting the person. But there's always that like fear, I think, when you're like, there's somebody on the loose, somebody that just had a shooting, where you're like, that fear until they kind of get captured or what happened to that person. But scary, because I was watching an interview with one of the police officers, and they're just like, I mean, obviously police do these things every day, so they're like, he's probably been to thousands of calls, that are burglary type of calls, and a lot of stores have their own assets protection and all that kind of stuff, security. And so probably just super routine, not even obviously thinking of it, the danger that you're walking into, but it seemed like it all escalated pretty quickly in that kind of situation. So
I was driving to the gym right when it happened. So all the police officers were zooming past me, and I had no idea what was happening. And then I went to the gym for an hour and left, and then Dodge Street was still, you couldn't get on the on-ramp at that point, but scary. And so in one of my past jobs, I worked in retail for 8 years. And so I was a front end supervisor and assisted loss prevention like hundreds of times. And so just knowing like that, how small those rooms are and how it's set up, I easily could empathize with just like what was going on. And it was gut wrenching. I don't know if you guys have listened to it. It's very emotional. I would put a trigger warning on listening to, it's like a 35-minute, they went from the first call to
like the police scanner type
the police
radio
scanner
stuff.
So you can listen to all, they compiled all the transmissions. And I mean, I just like weeped probably in the first 5 minutes, because you can hear the police officer, the dialogue between everybody, but then just how much calm it takes to be in a situation like that, and just how all the police officers organized and how they were just so calm in getting all of that together. I mean, I think it took like 40 minutes to capture him. And I know Rachel's not here, but she had messaged us and said she was on the road to Waverly when...
Yeah, heading to Lincoln.
Yeah, when that was happening. So she saw something. Maybe she will tell us, but...
Yeah. Well,
it's a lot.
Glad to hear he's okay. I mean, any type of a head wound from a gunshot is pretty serious. So,
and just, it's 2 heavy weekends, I think, for Omaha. Obviously we had the mayor, and we talked about that last week. And then the next Friday, you've got this happen. And so definitely never need reminders, or sometimes do need reminders, to be praying for those that are serving our city.
Amen.
And so continue to pray for him and his family. I know, he's a believer. They in a Facebook group I'm a part of from Grace University, that he was an alumni there. So I know they populated that, and people were talking about that and his family, and just praying for it, because he graduated from Grace. And so great that there's so much support for him. So. Yeah.
All right. Our next headline comes from WOWT.com. It says Nebraska declares pro-meat day on Colorado meatless day. So Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts is rallying against the proclamation by the governor of Colorado that encourages people to avoid meat for 1 day a week, calling it a direct attack on our way of life, and signing a pro-meat declaration of his own. So later on in the podcast today, we are going to be talking about pets and animals and all the creations of God's kingdom. So we thought maybe this would be an interesting topic to at least bring up in comparison here. Which side of this meat debate is everyone on? Are you a Coloradan or a Nebraskan?
Meet me in the middle.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a bad joke.
Oh, it was a really good one. I just didn't have the energy to laugh at it.
Thank you. It's always silly when people like literally come up with a proclamation, I think, to rebuttal. It's like the original subtweet, maybe, I guess, and they come up with something just to like throw shade at like another governor, and usually it's like political games and all that kind of stuff. And so I like meat, and so
yeah, you like. Well, I think we've been like talking
like
about
favorites.
Leviticus a lot lately here at the church, and there's all those scriptures about not eating blood.
Yeah,
and it's kind of interesting because you wonder what that connection is, because I mean, to eat meat is to eat blood, and obviously we're under.
You see that in the packaging.
Yeah,
which is
right.
kind of gross every time.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I've always, I think part of this, I think even later on our conversation will lead into more of this, but it's, I don't know. I think it's something it's a healthy thing to at least think about before, not just kind of blindly go, oh, we've always eaten meat, we've always done it this way, like it's fine. Maybe there's some things we can at least consider. What about you, Jess?
It seems, I mean, when he said that, I was like, this is so petty. It almost seemed petty to me, because it's and it seems like maybe there's a personal problem between both of them. Is there like some beef?
Whoa!
Oh, here we go. All the puns.
I would guess there's not much beef between them,
but maybe not.
I mean, I guess
maybe
how many
it's
miles is it
some
between
soy
Nebraska?
products? I don't know.
maybe one day a week there's not. In Colorado,
yeah, but I was just like,
Yeah.
why? When we literally need to be building bridges
And not out of meat.
yeah, building relationships. What did that help? What did it help? I mean, I think he's like,
Is he just like trying to be like,
I think
like
he's
super Nebraska?
Yeah,
we
and
we have Nebraska
right.
beef here, and
he was like, this
we're
is
proud
how
of
I
it.
can probably advocate for the farmers, stand up for them.
I do think there is like a pretty
But on the same
political
day,
rivalry
There's gotta
against
be.
Colorado, Nebraska. I think, if you look at the spectrum, I think Colorado's known as being a pretty liberal state. You talk about marijuana and their legalization of that. Our governor is very anti that and says things about it all the time, and I think takes some liberties about some of the dangers that are inside of those things. And so I think there is this very real, because we're border states, and we have I-80 as a corridor, which is one of the largest drug corridors through the U.S. I think there is like this, keep your drugs out of here, keep your meat out of here, all that kind of bickering and probably really about money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, what are you guys giggling about over there? And it's something. Can you want to share with the class?
no,
to be a drug-free zone.
I'm really, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is interesting that to say meat on the menu day is such a strange thing, because how is that countering what Colorado is doing? Because you're just saying, it's almost like you're saying only have meat one day out of the week, like guarantee that Saturday is your meat day. I mean, I get what he's trying to get at, but also it's just a very convoluted, strange.
And I do have friends that are vegan and vegetarian, and so I think that it could be a way of creating conversation of, I mean, because I do know people that think meat is unhealthy, and that there's a different way of getting protein and things that you need, nutrients into your body. So maybe if it's helping in that way, great. But I think doing it on the same day just seemed like, okay,
this is petty.
Even to me before I read it.
Maybe they decided to do it during Lent, because traditionally, as part of Lent, there is a day where you're not supposed to have meat. Fridays typically in Lent, from Ash Wednesday up until Easter are a day. And that's where like fish fries and things like that happen in the Catholic Church, because fish is the only exception to that. And so, and then all the menus, everybody has their fish sandwiches on sale right now, which I love, because I love fish sandwiches. I'm a big fan. So,
Okay,
it's good to know.
Yeah, that's something I didn't know about you.
Yeah,
I'm not really a fish sandwich person myself, but all right, let's wrap this conversation up about meat days. I guess we'll get into it a little more up next with our guest. Dr. Jerry Busselman will be talking to us about pets and animals. That should be a good time.
Yes.
Pets and animals, they're involved in all sorts of aspects of our lives, whether we're cuddling with them or eating them. But today we are joined by Dr. Jerry Busselman, veterinarian, correct?
Yep.
Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what it looks like in a day of a veterinarian?
Yeah. So I grew up here in Nebraska, so I'm a Husker through and through on a small family farm. So we were just kind of that normal family farm, small, where cow, calf, farrow to finish. Dogs lived in the barn, cats that we couldn't count, kind of thing. And so I wanted to go into vet medicine to make a difference, which was large animal, because in my world, the pets weren't what they on the farm. They weren't what they are today, in the urban areas. And so you made a difference by saving that cow or delivering that calf, or that's what put food on the table. And I always knew from the very beginning I wanted to make a difference in the people's lives as much as by helping the animal. And so I went to vet school. I went to Kansas State and got exposed to surgery and fell in love with surgery. Man, it was just like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. And then I thought, I know how that works at home. It's like that animal needs the surgery. It's going on the truck, right? I mean, we're not spending the money to fix that calf leg or something.
Yeah.
So I knew, well, then I better think about this small animal thing. And once I got into working with pets, then I started understanding the human-animal bond. I got to see the significance that those animals played in those people's lives. And I thought, I'm going to impact lives just as much working on a dog and a cat and, a small animal than just as much as I'm going to do by saving a cow.
Yeah.
And it's going to feed what I love to do. And from that moment on, it was kind of set in stone. I knew exactly kind of the direction I was going to go. And so then I did ER work. I was an emergency veterinarian for years and got to do some really fun, cool stuff. ER allows for lots of crazy stuff. But then opened my own practice about 16 years ago, and so I've just owned my own shop here in town. And we have there's 4 of us now, 4 vets at the practice, just doing pets.
How many pets does that represent, like just at your practice?
We have over 10,000 clients.
Wow.
Probably not all active. I'd have to go back and see how many of those are active.
Yeah.
But like if you came in and became a client, you'd be 10,000 and something.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We just went over that. And most animals have, or most people have 2 to 3 pets. So we probably have at least 10,000 pets in the practice.
Wow. It's just crazy to wrap my mind around. Like I think of going to the dentist and like or at least they act like they know who I am every time I come in. So how do you even keep up with, do you know pets or do you know people, their owners or whatnot?
Some people are better at it than others.
Yeah.
Right. I have a doctor who just has like a steel trap for mind for that. She'll see an animal like 4 years ago. This is not a joke. And I'll say, well, I'm seeing, Tasha Smith's dog, Toby. And she'll be like, oh, Toby, wasn't that the one that we did x-rays on? And didn't it have that mass in that left kidney area? I'll be like, I don't know. I got to go look it up. And 4 years ago, sure enough.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she has that gift, right?
Yeah.
Not so much me.
That's why you take notes.
Yeah, not so much me. I take lots of notes. If I see people at Walmart, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I'll know their clients, but until I see their dog with them, I don't remember which one.
Association.
Yeah.
And once I see their dog, I'm like, oh, yeah. But yeah, so I have to have a little bit more info than just a name.
Gotcha.
So let's go a little bit through your day.
Sure.
I mean, most of the time you're helping these people with their pets, whatever issues they have. I know I have a bulldog, and my wife just brought it in for anal gland expression and everything else that it has. All their issues. But a lot of times, you're dealing with a situation where an animal's got to be put down, or it has a bigger issue and things like that. Is that kind of a constant flux of emotion that happens, and you're kind of dealing with these people's emotions going through that with the loved pet?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what is today? Today's Wednesday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think I've done 3 or 4 this week.
Yeah.
So it's not a daily occurrence. It's probably a daily occurrence in the practice.
Yeah.
It's not a daily occurrence with me, just because we spread it out. But it is it's a significant part of what I do.
Yeah.
Is that the final farewell time with pets.
Yeah. And is that something, I mean, you talked about you were kind of energized by learning surgery and being involved in that. Is kind of, do you feel like you're kind of counseling these people as they're, is that something that you enjoy doing, or is that kind of like, okay, this is the tough part of my day when I have to do this?
I think that's very personality driven.
Yeah. Right.
You can have a pastor who thrives on counseling the couples ready for divorce.
Yeah.
And you have another pastor who just wipes them out.
Yeah.
Same act.
Yeah.
But taken in very differently.
Yeah.
So for me, because my passion is people, I get to do that through animals, right? I see what that animal needs, and that animal needs to be relieved of its suffering. And I get the privilege, right? I get to steward that animal from a terrible place to a peaceful place.
Yeah.
And I get to help owners come to an understanding that what they're doing is actually a kind, good, generous thing, right? Yeah. It's breaking your heart, but what you're doing is good stewardship of a life. And you're doing it for them, not for you.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, it's something I feel like I do pretty well at.
Yeah. One thing that's been brought to many people's attention lately that I don't think a lot of people were aware of for a long time is just that suicide rates and depression are pretty prevalent in your field.
Huge.
And it's something that I know when we were planning for this podcast, it wasn't something I was really aware of. You kind of think, oh, a veterinarian, they're just, high on life. They're just helping animals and everything's great, right? And
they are in the game of life. I know that's one of the in the game of life we play it with our kids, and that's one of the cards you can draw for a career. And you're like, there you go. If you go to college, you can be like a professor, a veterinarian, and I usually try to pick veterinarians, so they do good in life.
But let's talk a little bit about that. Maybe like what is kind of causing some of that? What's leading people to that place in that profession? At least.
No, I think it's good. I mean, it's good that it's now coming up because we've known it as vets. I can think of here in town several technicians, one doctor that basically euthanized themselves. That's kind of what the terminology we would use. Yeah. Right. Use suicide in most circles, but in our circles we don't say suicide. You know? For men, I think it's about 1.5 times higher than any other profession. I think for women, female vets, which by the way, 90% of vet graduates are female now. So it's a hugely dominated female profession now. I think almost 3 times standard, like 3 times average for females. And it's somewhere between 2.5 to 5 times higher than the average population for support staff. So I think everybody feels it. Your question was why? Why do I think that happens? I mean, suicide, multifactorial, obviously, right? But when I think about it through the narrow lens of vet medicine, I think to be a vet, there's certain characteristics that vet have. Number one, you're compassionate. And a lot of people go into the profession because of compassion. So they have a high empathy. They're detailed oriented. I mean, crazy, some of them, right? Very detailed. They're meticulous, which is what you want all your doctors to be. They care, right? And now they're asked to become an expert across a variety, not just a species, but multiple species, with not just surgery or internal medicine or dermatology or ophthalmology or oncology. They're asked, we need you to be the best at all these things. And we're going to raise that expectation bar there, and you're going to care, and we're going to keep you caring because we want this expectation to be so high. So if you aren't the best at it, we're going to help remind you that you're not the best by complaining, by what was wrong, how did that happen? So then the pressure comes, and I'm not just saying from the external, not from pet owners, but from the internal, right? Your own self. Why didn't I do that right? I mean, we just had a case this morning where everything was done right, and there was a complication. There wasn't one thing done wrong.
Yeah.
And there was a complication. It wasn't that serious of a complication, but it still was a complication. And so I now have veterinarians, technicians, support staff feeling bad. Why did I do it wrong?
Yeah.
And so, and because they care so much, it hits them really, really hard. And I think that and then you add euthanasia to it, and some of the emotional toll that loss takes. And if people haven't learned to grieve well, they hold that, they stuff that, they don't grieve it in a healthy way. And that stuff just builds and builds and builds until they're just seeing, they don't see how they're ever going to do it right or do it well. And now there's huge student debt, and they're not making money, and it just all adds up.
I think even for me, like pastorally, if I am a part of funerals for humans and people, die for whatever reason, that takes a huge toll on me. To do that, there's family and all that involved, but usually those are, happening because of natural reasons. And so I would think that the euthanasia part of that would take, like, as me even thinking about you saying that's happened 3 times, for you this week, I'm like, oh man, like, I don't know on both sides of that, like walking through it emotionally with a pet, and even all of that goes into that, because they obviously, I would guess, don't fully know what's happening like a human would, if you're taking them off life support or whatever the human kind of comparisons would be, that waits for there, and then care of, family members. You've got kids that have different attachments to it, or maybe even spouses that have a disagreement on what the best, plan of treatment is. And maybe it's bleeding people financially, and you've got that side of things. And so even thinking of that to me is just overwhelming of what that would be like to walk through weekly, even just once a week or once a month. And so that emotional toll.
They did a study, and they asked veterinarians, what percentage of you have had to euthanize an animal that had a treatable issue, completely solvable, but they had to euthanize because of finances? And it was 47%. Oh my. So more than half of the vets euthanize pets that they wish they hadn't had to euthanize, but they had to, because you're sure not going to let them die like that.
Yeah.
And all they needed was money, and they could have fixed it. So that takes a toll. Again, it's those kinds of things where you're like, I want to, but I can't, or that I think really drives this deep internal sadness that sometimes a lot of vets feel.
Yeah, one thing that you do see whenever there's fundraising or anything like that, a lot of times you'll see the Humane Society kind of win those types of charitable events. Because animals do pull on the heartstrings of humans, and there's connections there. So when and you spoke a little bit about farm animals and things like that, and there's probably I think we're pretty good at making a distinction between our meal and our pet. But let's talk just a little bit about that, and where, as Christians, should we look at that? Because these are God's creatures, where we are reliant pretty heavily on meat in this country for mealtime. Is that something that, at least even in the veterinary world, is that something where they draw the line very easily, or is it something where do you see veganism and vegetarianism much more prominent in that field, or is that even really a discussion that's at the forefront of their minds?
So I wouldn't know stats on that, but it's just in my personal experience.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, I would say that it would probably be just as much average in the vet community as it would across society. Who's a vegetarian, who's a vegan?
Yeah,
and actually probably for very similar reasons.
Yeah.
So my daughter is a vegetarian by choice, based on production medicine. So she grew up in a vet world, right? And she sees what production, medicine looks like in animals, just the production piece, and she thinks there's enough negative aspects to that she will forgo meat to push against that, right? But
could you explain production medicine just a little bit, just for people who might not know?
Production medicine is the ability to take an animal, take them to the fastest growth rate on the least amount of money to make the most amount of profit, and to do that as no matter what. So husbandry, on the other hand, is more of a mutual thing. If a person does husbandry, which was like done in the 20s, right? You didn't have a feedlot of 100,000 head or whatever. And I'm not going against that. I'm just saying this is how it's done, right? And what is different. But in husbandry, you had 20 cattle. They were grass-fed way more. And there was more of an interaction between the human and the animal and more a common dependence on each other. They all wound up on the dinner table, right? But how they got there was different. And that's the difference between what I consider husbandry and high production. And so your question about vegan and vegetarian, I think that's, I don't think it's any, like I said, I don't think it's any different. I do think, I would say this. So you guys sit at a church. You're behind the veil. There's a whole lot of people in the pew who have no idea what it's like behind the veil. But as pastors, you know what that's like. And you have to filter your own spiritual world through that veil of what you think the church should be and maybe what the church is like on the backside, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of like what medicine can be like, right?
Yeah.
We have this out here. Those are the people. They're just, this is it. We get to be behind the veil. We get to see the good, the bad, the ugly, right? It doesn't mean there's no value in it. We know more.
Yeah.
Because we kind of we've lived it a little bit more tangibly.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I'm curious. I'm the one without a pet here, so I know Jess, you guys have some pets, and Eric, you mentioned your bulldog earlier, and so I grew up with, both my wife and I grew up in pet loving houses, and we're not anti-pet, but we've got four little kids, and it's just crazy. But I know as parents, one of the things I often hear is like, hey, one of the best ways to teach people responsibility, once our kid gets to a certain age, we want to teach them responsibility. So we'll start to get them a pet, and that's going to teach them responsibility. And I get it to some certain extent, but I'm curious, like, from your take on how good is that? Because what I see in a few different seats is, one, I've got, friends who have pets and then they have a kid, and then, this pet that they've been obsessed with, that they love, that is like their kid. They talk about it like their kid, and that's fine. Now is like they have a baby and that pet's forgotten. Maybe they just put a bowl out, but they're not walking it anymore, and those types of things. And I see that happen in families that love puppies, right? There's the puppy phase, and you get your puppy, and then all of a sudden this thing that you spent all this time with, like, you just back off and remove from. And so what are your thoughts on that type of, like, a pet is the best way to start to teach your kid responsibility? Does it depend? Is there a certain pet? You start with a goldfish. Yeah. What does that look like? It's a loaded question.
No, it's not. Actually, it's a really good question. I wish more people would actually ask that one. Yeah. Right? How I counsel people is think about what you'll be doing when you need to say goodbye to this pet. So easy to say right now, this is perfect. I'm single, or we just got married, want a new dog. And we just got all this time, and it's just the perfect time for us. And then, what kind of dog are you getting? Okay, how long is it going to live? 12. Tell me what your life looks like in 12 years. Because that's the dog. That's what's going to happen when you have that pet at a time that you really need to spend time with that pet, right? Well, we don't know what we're going to be doing. Well, you're going to be married. You're going to have 2-3 kids. And then all of a sudden they go, wait a minute, this may not be the pet for us, because I don't think what we can do now, we probably won't be able to do then. I'm not saying that's bad. You just have to have realistic expectations of what you think you can do. And as a Christian, right, I think our job is stewardship. I don't care what it is. Environment, animals, our family. You know, we steward things. God's asked us to steward well, right?
Yeah.
And so I try and get them into the conversation of what is stewardship going to look like for you now, in the middle, and at the end. And are you okay with all that? Because if you are, man, go for it. How wonderful of a thing to add to your life. If anywhere in there you go, I don't think so, then you better really reevaluate it. Maybe you better get a pet that lasts 2 years instead of 20 years, like a cat.
I think about that now because we got our first dog when Gavin, my oldest, was 1. So Gavin's going to be 7, Rocky's going to be 6. And just last week, you saying this made me remember, and so I laughed a little bit. I was just thinking, he asked Alexa, how long do dogs live?
Oh, no.
And, she said 12 years. And I was like, why'd you have to give a number? Like, that should be like a censored question that she answers. But you're very right about, okay, so then I started thinking, okay, Gavin is going to be 12, Derek's going to be 10. Now we're going to have to start, thinking about that kind of stuff. So, yeah, very much. Good point.
Your question about is it good to have kids to do it, right?
Yeah.
I almost laugh at that because everybody says that. And if you knew how many of the moms now take care of the dog 24/7.
Yeah, which is...
It's like all
That's
of
what
them,
I thought when...
Yeah.
right? And here's why. Because, okay, we're going to have you learn responsibility on an inanimate object, an Xbox or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, if they don't do it, they don't do it. It just gets dusty in the corner. Well, you sure can't do that with a pet.
Yeah.
It's not like you can say, well, you didn't feed it for the last 4 days, it died. Your problem.
Yeah.
Somebody has to step in. It's a wonderful way to learn responsibility. But in reality, it gets old in a hurry, and then what you don't want is your kids resenting your pets.
Yeah.
That's not good, healthy in your
Yeah,
family.
it's a wonderful way to learn.
Right.
Someone else can be responsible when I don't want to as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
The opposite.
Or you resenting your pet for
Or
having
you're
to take
resenting
on.
your kid because they're not taking care of the pet they asked for. I've seen all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think it can be a piece of teaching a kid good responsibility. But if you're relying on a living creature to teach your child responsibility, that's a little risky in my mind.
Yeah. Do pets know? I mean, do they have this full gamut of a dog, for example, or a cat, of that emotional? I know they're emotionally attached to humans, but like if I've spent 3 years with this pet and I've loved it, taken care of it, fed it, and then all of a sudden I'm emotionally unattached because I've got a new thing going on in my life, whatever that is. What does that do to like the psyche? Do they get depressed? What does it do to a pet?
Yeah. So the answer is I think so. I see evidence of that.
Yeah.
I see medical evidence of it. So, I mean, you take off a cat, they're going to pee on everything. I mean, you're going to have cat urine all over the place because they're mad at you. And that's real. I have this one client where she had a new boyfriend. She got a new boyfriend. And anytime the boyfriend was over, take off his shoes and put it there. Cat walk over and pee in the shoe.
Why are you
In the
here?
shoe.
Wow.
Like every time. And so the boyfriend just had to put the shoes up. And I mean, you talk about, once, okay, but every time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's lots of that. I mean, I have story after story after story of an animal either being sad or angry. I've watched animals grieve as another animal has passed. So you'll have two animals that live together most of their life. One passes, that other animal truly grieves. You can see it. You hear the story and at what happens in the house, and they're grieving. So, yeah, I think they really do emotions.
It's fascinating.
We talked a little bit about what, medication and things like that you prescribe to animals. And one topic that's been pretty prominent in the headlines is insulin and how expensive it is for humans to get a hold of. But yet there are animals dealing with diabetes, and it seems that the cost of the insulin given to them is less, at least perception-wise from the public. Is that something that you've dealt with clients and had to walk them through that? Is that a perception that we're understanding correctly, or is there something else behind the scenes that's going on?
Yeah, good question. So we use human insulin in animals.
Okay.
There's only one insulin, basically. Well, I shouldn't say, but it's called Vetsulin. It's a kind of a vet insulin. It's a porcine insulin, which is the most biochemically and structure-wise, it's the closest to pet insulin. So most human insulin is recombinant, human synthesized. It's made synthesized, right? Mm-hmm. And it looks like human insulin. Well, human insulin and dog insulin or cat insulin are different enough. Anyway, I'm getting way too deep into the weeds of diabetes.
It's interesting.
Anyway, I script out almost all my insulin to Walgreens or Sam's or Hy-Vee. So most of my pets that are on human insulin paying human prices.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If it's the vet insulin, it's cheaper. Vet insulin, like a human, I just scripted out. I forget which insulin it was. It was going to be the newest out there is $500 in one bottle. That's the newest one, which we never use because who's going to afford that, right? Yeah. But even the standard insulin's probably about $130, $140 for a bottle. Mm-hmm. And the vet ones are maybe 40 or 50.
Yeah.
But you will go through this one so much faster. Mm. So I don't know, I'd have to look at the ratios, but you may go through 3 vet ones for every one human one.
Oh, okay. Is that like a quantity or effectiveness?
It's the difference between the concentration. Yes. There's something called U100 and U40.
Okay.
And so it's just the concentration of insulin that you're given.
It's so hard being in situations where, especially if it's like life or death, deciding if how much you're gonna spend on your animal. I mean, full disclosure, Dr. Busselman is our dog's vet. Since they were puppies, they both have gone to him. And there has been one situation where with our youngest dog, Little John, that's really his name.
Does he know the East Side Boys?
That's only when he's bad we call him Lil John, but he's Little John. Okay. And
Robin Hood.
Yeah, I was going to say, is he part of the Merry Man?
I was going rappers. Sorry, my bad.
I know, same. And so there was
Disney.
Yeah, Disney side over here.
And so there has been one time where we had just gotten Little John and he was in a literally life or death situation. And I give you full credit for knowing, I think I said it even the other day, he had a blood clotting issue and you just rattled it off exactly what it was. But it was a lot of money. I mean, it was emergency vet and all of that stuff. But then it was making the decision, okay, do I spend $800 on my pet that is part of our family and that's literally going to crush our children? And do you see that a lot of people wrestling?
Money is always an issue.
Yeah.
And I think a good veterinarian will just be honest with that decision that has to be made. And I think one thing that I always push against is assuming that you know what that person should be doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I will lay out all of the options, and then I will give you permission to do any of them based on your circumstances, your situation, and your finances. Mm-hmm. So, there are things that just can't be done. What you think I want? You think I want your money if you can't pay your kids?
Right.
You can't feed your kids? Mm-hmm. Of course not. Mm-hmm. No, I don't even want it. Mm-hmm. It's way more important to be in your pocket than over onto my pocket to save an animal. And some vets would disagree with me on that, right? Mm-hmm. This could be controversial in the vet world because you're like, well, your duty is to the animal. And again, I'm more about people than through their pets. So my love for the people is I want what's best for you. I want what's best for your family. Mm-hmm. And I will take care of your pet to provide that. But that's not how it's always done, and that's just a different approach. Mm-hmm. But yes, money is a big issue. I know there was a question there I kind of ran over.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think of that whole stewardship. You brought that up several times, but that stewardship, how do you help people figure out that line, you've got a $10,000, I could do this. We could save your dog. They're going to live maybe 2 more happy years. But also that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And I don't know everything about your financial situation, but you're so emotionally attached. How do you help people pull their emotions, I guess, out of some of that stuff and the stewardship of their pets, and then continuing to feed it and all those kind of things?
I think that would be really difficult.
Yeah, that's as much art, as it is facts.
Right.
First of all, that's where relationship with your veterinarian matters.
Yeah.
If you walk into an ER clinic, you're going to be handled differently than if I've known your pet and I've known you, and I've watched your kids grow up, and I know,
Yeah, you've whipped my kids into shape a couple times.
but I just know you. So I would be able to speak into your life easier because, see, I did both. I was an ER doc. I mean, I just got to see all of that, and I got to see some of the worst decisions you've ever seen in your life, in the sense that there were people who had no business spending money who spent it, and people who he could have afforded anything be like, I had one guy just say, I'll take it home and shoot it. And I was like, this is an easy fix. I mean, just come up with a little bit and we can help you out,
Yeah.
So you got to see both extremes. But I think for when you know your veterinarian, and if you have a relationship, which is hopefully what it's based on, then they're going to help coach you and tease out some of the things, what's best for you guys. And at the same time, advocate for a pet. So my job is to advocate for the pet. That may be for its euthanasia. Now, I only usually advocate for euthanasia based on pain, suffering, kind of a scale of those things, right? It's your job to say that's not okay for us, and here's the reasons why. And then it's my job to honor that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we just hearing you speak of that, I think we see people put their pets in different categories of their life all across the board. I mean, there was a Christian Post article that spoke how Americans spend more money on Halloween costumes for their pets than they do on mission work. But then you also have the other extreme of the guy who, well, okay, I'm not going to pay anything for this dog. I'll just take care of it myself. The Bible talks a lot about dominion over the animals. What does that mean for a Christian who's maybe looking at, okay, well, there's an example of Adam having dominion over the animals in the Garden of Eden, where they didn't really talk about him eating them or anything.
Sure.
But then we have the fall, and there's now people on all sides of that argument. How do we kind of navigate that? Or maybe even personally, how do you navigate that? Like, what's too much? What's too little? Is that just down to personal opinion? Or is there maybe some biblical standards that we could look to?
I think, deciding what to do with the pets is a first world problem.
Right.
Right? When I'm in Africa working on cattle, we're not talking about, are they taking care of that dog well?
Yeah.
I mean, they're just trying to live. And the dog plays a role in that life, and it's not a pet, And so I think the lens that we look through so much through is the lens of a wealthy American environment.
Yeah.
And therefore, that skews how we look at things. So when you say dominion over, I think that word carries connotations,
Right.
both mostly negative, at least in my circles. That's kind of I'm going to dominate.
Yep.
Right. Yes, that word was used, but the word I use is steward.
Yeah.
Because that's what God asked them to do in the garden. I mean, he had dominion over them in the sense that he was in charge of stewarding them. But I don't think, God said, you can just cut down everything here in the garden.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's what stewardship looks like. So where does it play a role in the Christian, right? In the Christian's life? I think if you take away like the financial things, because we're stupid with money, and we'll go spend $100 on dinner. What do you do? Really? But I will on a nice night out or whatever, where I could give all that money. I could go to McDonald's and give 89 of it to the missions.
Yeah.
That's that argument we could have over 1,000 different areas.
Lots of different things.
1,000 different areas. So I don't even put that one into the pet thing. Because why don't we talk about your car or your slacks or whatever you're doing? Okay. So what I look at it from a Christian point of view is animals play roles in our lives that I think God has placed. So different people interact with animals in a different way, and I call it the joy factor. Okay, so you have a bulldog.
Yeah.
Right. So when you come home, how does your bulldog react?
She gets very excited.
Super excited.
Yeah.
Wags her little nub.
What happens inside of you at that moment?
You feel love, you feel happiness, you want to pet her. Or you might go, well, okay, you're too excited. I'm not worth it.
Okay.
Settle down.
But something happens in you.
Yeah, right.
And I call that your joy factor. So you've interacted with that pet, and something's happened in your joy.
Yeah.
You've either off the charts, or like, oh, that's so cute, you little stinky thing, or whatever it is, right? And so that's a God-given thing.
Yeah.
You're unique in that way. You have a different reaction to that pet than probably anybody in the whole world.
Right.
And who gave that to you? That's deep. That's deep stuff, right?
Yeah.
That is. You better get down on the floor and just roll around.
I mean, what happens in you is deep.
Yeah.
Because that comes from a deep internal place that God put in you. That's not the same across the board.
Yeah.
Not only, I mean, there may be a person who interacts with a cow like that, and you may go, "Are you kidding me? It's a cow."
Yeah.
But they have that thing happens, and so that's that human animal thing that I think is has a spiritual thing that goes with it. Okay. If that is the case, then I think that should be honored.
Yeah.
And if that's you should honor that, and you should steward that in you. Oh, thanks. But if that's not the case, if that doesn't happen in you, and that's okay, then you just have to honor that and say, I just don't get the same buzz you get out of that. Therefore, I'll make decisions in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go beat a dog, but I'm not going to spend a bunch of money. I'm not going to, I mean, it's just like, here's it's just my farm dog. They live in the barn.
Yeah.
We take care of them, and we cut a bag of dog food open and throw it out there, and that and the coons eat it, and that's just the way we are. Some people would say that is terrible abuse. You should go to Africa first of all, and then say that. But as long as you're taking care of the pet, like meeting its needs, right? And God would say our needs are, according to Him, clothing, shelter, food.
Yep.
And above all that, God will take care of it. I mean, He'll take care of all that. So if you're doing those things, then I allow you the freedom to honor what is happening inside of you. And if you want to spend $10,000 because something in you, and you have it, you're not going in the wrong direction, you're not disobeying what you feel God has given you, He's provided, all of that, then I will let you honor whatever God's done between you and that pet. I mean, it's just a different way of looking at it, but that's what I see.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. Speaking of pets and, the Bible, as we kind of are dancing around those topics, have you seen animals used in ministry for, I'm sure you've talked about it, inoculating cows and things like that in Africa.
And through missions.
Through missions. But I mean, are there other, even if that is the example, what examples have you seen of pets and animals in ministry?
I would say, okay, so I use the term ministry a little bit different, right?
Sure.
So because interacting with people on a day-to-day basis and getting into their lives is doing ministry.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right?
100%.
I mean, you would say that. You
Probably more than I get
sitting
to.
with a student having coffee. You're doing ministry, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I get to see people at some of their greatest joys and some of their deepest sorrows.
Yeah.
And I get to walk in those moments with them, good and bad. Sometimes that leads to spiritual conversations. I mean, if you got, are animals in heaven? Mm-hmm. Lots of those questions.
What's the answer?
Yeah, we were hoping you would tell us that today.
The movie didn't tell me.
All mine, none of yours.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
So we can go into that. That's fine. I can do a lot of ministry in moments like that. Mm-hmm. I've prayed with people in rooms. I've chosen not to, where it wasn't right, where it wasn't the right time. We've talked about eternity, and we've talked about the silliest little things that their dogs love to do. Mm-hmm. But so to me, I don't. Yes, animals are part of ministry. There's one of a counselor that I know who animal sits as a therapy animal. Mm-hmm. So as someone is dealing with trauma, which I can't think of anything more spiritual than allowing God into your trauma. Mm-hmm. That pet is there to take some of that pain. Mm. That's a spiritual thing. Yeah. It seems silly, but I think it really is.
Yeah.
And so I think in those terms, animals are a lot of part of ministry because animals are a lot of people's lives. And I've seen animals loved more than family members because family members betrayed and animals didn't. Yeah. And so the love was directed to the animal. And so if we get into that and we really get into deeper conversations about that, people will own that. And it will open them up to conversations that are more significant than just my dog, kind of thing. So
I even think like that story where you're sharing the bulldog is like that feeling of I'm known and noticed by something, and for some people, I mean, your kids aren't wagging their tails.
Yeah.
Daddy.
Thankfully, they don't have tails.
Which is good. So, but I do think for so many people that's even a ministry, to someone's soul of like. I'm known. I'm noticed something.
I'm seen. I'm valued.
I'm relied on. I can do something. I can provide. I do have worth, especially, if you've been on the flip side of not feeling that from people you love or feeling like you can't contribute or you've ruined or wrecked a relationship. There is that piece where I've seen, an animal doing ministry in someone's life. They don't even realize it, but it's one of the ways that God, I think, is in his infinite goodness and crazy how he uses things to teach us about love. And so that is a cool way to think of ministry that I hadn't considered yet.
Yeah, I know we kind of almost joked about the pets in heaven thing. And I think that's a question that comes up probably every time we have a Q&A with Mr. Mark where, people want to know, is my dog in heaven? And I think he makes the same joke a lot about your dog is, but your cat isn't.
So what's he answer? How does he answer it?
That's the answer, I think. That I don't know. I don't know his answer verbatim to probably repeat it.
Yeah, I think he thinks animals will be in heaven, but your pet,
from Earth, maybe not.
That pet, little John, right. I don't know.
Well,
sorry, I don't want to go personal.
I don't think God stopped creating.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be unbelievable animals in heaven. Stuff we've never seen or even imagined. I can't wait to ride some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think God probably just went crazy.
Yeah.
Having a ball making stuff.
This story came to mind when I was in high school. I had a friend who he had dogs all the time, multiple dogs in his house. His whole life, his family's whole life, many of them had passed, and he asked me, well, I see my dog in heaven, and I remember just being, I was probably 16, 17 years old. I was raised in the church. I just had all the answers, right? So of course I told him, no, your dog's not going to be in heaven. Like, just matter of fact, I'm helping him out, just giving him the hard truth, And I saw it crush him so much. Mm-hmm. He's just welled up with tears. Like, I destroyed, him emotionally. And ever since then, it's like, who am I to say? Mm-hmm. At this point, maybe we don't have a direct biblical scripture to point to, but at this point, if this is something that is going to be a barrier for someone to meet God, then who am I to be the one to have that answer for you? And so I think one of those things, that was just a hard thing that I had to go through. It's not really ministry, but it's just, when you're talking to people, how they react to that. So
little John might be there, Alex.
Jerry's gonna, Dr. Busselman, he's gonna tell us what's the answer. Do they have souls? What?
I'll tell you what I tell people.
Yeah.
Right. First of all, I usually ask, are you sure you'll be there? That's always my favorite, right? That's my end. That's my end. Okay, so your dog, if you want to know about your dog being in heaven, is that someplace that you're pretty confident you're going to be?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
That's a good spot.
Yeah.
Gut punch.
So then after that, I usually say, what I understand about God and what I understand about heaven is God loves to give you good things.
Yeah.
That's his character. He wants the best for you.
Yeah.
And in heaven, it's all good.
Yeah.
Everything we've ever desired is in heaven, starting with God. So if you vastly desire in heaven to have Fido with you, I'm quite sure God will provide that. My own personal belief is I don't think Fido's going to be that important when we get there.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be other things that we go, oh, I'm way more interested in this, or I want this more. But to say for sure that God wouldn't provide something that you are desiring in the perfect place with the perfect God, I wouldn't step on that. I wouldn't step on that line, man.
It's interesting because there is such a purity when it comes to animals and the way that they, especially like a dog, unconditional love to a human that we see no matter what we do, they love us.
Oh, it's so true. I'm trying not to cry this whole episode. Like I'm quiet, but I'm like,
I saw the
I'm
tears in your
trying.
eyes.
Because I feel like I have 5 kids.
Rocky and
I
Little
really
John.
do. I mean,
Well, and I think it's interesting because people, the way you present that question to them, people are probably almost to a certain extent thinking, if depending on where their love is for their animal, I'm almost more concerned about my animal getting to heaven than myself. There was a time when there was I was a kid and my dad was driving, and there was this guy who we don't know what he was on, something, whether drugs or whatever, and he was trying to kill himself. He was trying to walk out in the street to get hit by a car. And so cars are starting to stop, and his little dog was following him out into that street every time. And what this guy was doing, even though he was a little out of his mind, he'd pick that little dog up and bring it back to the yard. And then he'd walk back out on the street to try to get hit. And that dog would follow him, and he'd pick that dog up. And it was just something where he didn't value his own life at all, but he cared about that dog not getting hit by a car. So it's one of those things where people are capable of caring for others and even animals more than themselves a lot of times. And I think that your dynamic and relationship that you form with your clients is really fascinating. I think even for a Christian's perspective to understand how to talk through these things and self-worth and how they value their pet versus themselves and things it's really fascinating. Yeah. I don't know. Does anybody else have any question? I don't want to steal any time from anybody else who has a question.
I just feel like even though maybe it's a once or twice a year thing, it's a relationship that I really value. I mean, it's like if we're talking about animals and how they're a part of our life, I mean, you're looking at me and I just feel, I feel emotional just because animals, I know other people are feeling me too.
Yeah.
Because they have fur babies, but it's something where it's like I maybe see you once or twice a year, but your value in my life and the voice that you get to have in my life is up there because I trust you with my animal. So I'm just like, as we're having this conversation, I mean, and we always talk about, who do we allow to have a voice in our life, right? Who do we in our culture allow to speak into us? And it's also the people that we choose to go to as doctors, as who does your hair. I mean, who do we let to influence us? And so the way that you communicate and the way that you are thinking about things spiritually, I mean, I'll be with you as long as you're a doctor, but it's more just seeing that impact and just, I mean, the joy factor. Wow. Like that really sits with me. And yeah, I'm thankful for what you do and for your heart. And I think it's a picture that we don't get to see that often. Right. So it's like, it just scrolled through my Facebook a couple weeks ago of somebody was struggling with, and the Not One More Vet. And I was like, wow, this is like somebody that I see that I really value. And like, they don't feel cared about. So I think like when I saw you, like the first thing I said was like, are you okay? Like I care about you and like, I value what you say. And so I think like our words and how we're interacting, even if it's somebody that we're only seeing a couple times a year, like, man, how are we treating those people?
Yeah. Or even
too.
just the ministry aspect of it. We talk about ministry so differently from inside the church a lot of times. And sometimes people go, well, what is my ministry? And to hear, someone who in some ways that people may perceive it as just this practical job you're doing with animals, you're doing ministry with these people on a day-to-day basis. It's always
so much more.
And it's so much more than we want to give it credit to be.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we just do as people is any place in life, if once you're a parent, you're like, oh, people that don't have kids, they don't know. There's people that hate pets, or they're like, oh, those crazy people that act like their pets are their baby and their baby is not as important as my real baby. And all of that kind of conversation, when I was talking to people about, hey, we're going to have this conversation, they're like, what's uncomfortable about that? But I think at every level, when we consider pets and how big of a role they do have in our lives, and how God has given them to us, especially in this country, though it's a first world problem, to steward. We didn't invent pethood or anything like that, but it's a space that we're in that God has given us in his abundance that he's blessed us with here in America to steward, and we have to make difficult decisions of what that looks like. And I think that is it's uncomfortable when you really think about and having empathy for people. Maybe you're somebody that's like, that person treats their pet, like like they are the Holy Grail, like they're a human, like they are the most prized thing in the world. Well, get to know their story, because maybe there's a reason, and maybe people in their lives haven't done that, and they've had to rely, on that pet's unconditional love and that joy factor, because it's the only thing that's keeping them around. It's the only thing that's bringing meaning and purpose to their life. And getting to know people, I think, always, instead of judging them, is a good recommendation. So,
you said something about your bulldog, right?
Yeah.
You could walk up to another bulldog owner and instantly have a connection.
Yeah, for sure.
Bulldog people like bulldog people.
It's like a Jeep owner.
It's like totally, It's like exactly like a Jeep owner, where you take pictures of your Jeep on Facebook. What's that? Okay, anyway, so but it is right. So animals make connections for people, and instantly. Yeah. And there's just this thing. And the other thing those animals do that I absolutely love is I will see the biggest, scariest, tattiest monster of a man come in with this little 7-pound thing, weeping. Yeah. And will grab me and hold me because he's in so much pain. Yeah. Emotionally. And this guy probably, I have him in my head. This is a true person. I don't know the last time he cried. Who knows what his story is. I know some of his story, and he had a really rough background and all that, but that animal met him at places that nobody did. And I was able to meet him in the grief when he had to say goodbye, that nobody could. Wow. Because I knew that animal. And that's a beautiful thing. And so cool. I just think there's lots of God in those things.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. I think even for myself, I'm like, my mind is going 1,000 other ways. I could probably sit here and talk for another hour.
Alex, when are you getting a puppy?
I think he said fish. We're
starting with the fish. Okay. And we're going to name him Big John.
As long as it fills your joy factor.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, as it wags its tail. All right. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
If you have any questions or concerns, you'd like to reach out to us, you can do that on social media at CCC Omaha, or you can send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.org. We'd love to hear from you. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.